It has been well known that Russia has been conducting what's called a crypto mobilization. This is a covert mobilization. It's not declared by the Kremlin. It's not necessarily they're doing this to hide mobilizing additional troops from the West or from the Ukraine, but really they're doing it to hide it from the Russian population, which is why they target poor, rural, smaller areas, not Moscow and St. Petersburg, to execute these mobilizations in secret. But we all know that Wagner Group was trying to mobilize troops or draft troops from the prison system, and Vladimir Putin actually put a stop to this, said he can't do it anymore. We all assumed that he was doing it because that's just the right thing to do. Recruiting prisoners is a bad idea. Well, in fact, it's because Prigozhin and Wagner Group were cutting in on the troop pools from the Kremlin themselves. Russian courts are now granting mass deferrals and even vacating prison sentences to men convicted of offenses as long as they agree to go fight in Ukraine. Now, Russia's criminal code of criminal procedure allows judges to postpone the execution of a sentence in exceptional circumstances. The special military operation is clearly an exceptional circumstance. This is being reported by the independent Russian news outlet Vertska. They said that judges are now more frequently using this power to send offenders to the front than ever before. Recent convicted offenders in prison now have actually been petitioning the Federal Penitentiary Service and state-controlled courts to get out of prison so they can go to the front line. It makes sense. Now, a lot of the times, and actually most of the time, their sentence is just deferred, so they're going to have to come back and do it anyways. But let's be real, you're out of prison. You get a weapon and a little bit of training, you might be golden. You could just disappear, especially if you're in Ukraine. You go to the Ukrainian front line, you disappear into Ukraine. That's a problem. These are criminal offenders. They're getting a weapon. They're getting some training. Now, I say training kind of tongue-in-cheek because a few of these offenders ended up on the front line 10 days after their court case. And even some of them were on the front line when their court case took place, which lends us to all believe that this is just providing some sort of administrative top cover. Instead of these offenders going to prison, they're going to the front line. Our families aren't really seeing them or anything like that, but they're on the front line fighting. They're not a number in a book, so they weren't technically mobilized. Of course, some of them would willingly trade to go to Ukraine instead of stay in a Russian prison, and some of them may be there for really egregious criminal offenses. But there's a couple that have some pretty silly criminal offenses, including, not that they're silly in general, but community service for drunk driving. A man got 80 hours of community service, ended up on the front line 10 days later. Some are now petitioning to get out of community service or even 6 months or 8 months of jail time, going to the front line because they've been told that Russia is winning and it's an easy fight. And then they end up there and, oh shit, they're in a vicious dogfight with Ukraine, not realizing that they had been lied to. And this is currently where the Russian military conscription and draft status is. It is a complete mess, and they're trying to do it quietly, pulling from the poor, pulling from inmates. And it seems Putin has taken a book from Prigozhin and deferring or even vacating criminal cases for people that either have already been mobilized and using it administratively to say they're not mobilized, they're just in prison, don't go look for them, or just using it to get their criminal base out of the populations and send them to the Ukrainian front line. Either way, it's not a good look for what the potential success of the Russian army is in Ukraine.